Hey gamers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire, and today I'm going to be reviewing Galenus, Medical Showmanship and Bitter Rivalry in Ancient Rome. So let's have a look at how it plays, and then we'll get some final thoughts. So here's Galenus all set up for solo play. I'm going to give you like a general description of what happens in the multiplayer game, and then talk about how that changes for solo. This game does have a lot of intricacies, and I'm going to keep my summary short, so you're definitely going to want to check the rulebook. This is not a comprehensive teach. But essentially, in the multiplayer game, you're trying to score the most impact points on this scoring track. In the solo game, what you're trying to do is reach the 4 goals on these Pergamon cards before the end of year 5. And there are 2 sets of these cards that are double-sided, so you can have different goals. So these are going to push you to try different things in the game and push different mechanisms. The structure of the game in both multiplayer and solo is relatively similar in that you have a work phase where you're taking actions both in your home and out here in the city. And then at the end of each year, after you've taken all of your actions, you have a little contest where you see who is the best doctor around, at least in terms of presentation in a given year. Meanwhile, you're also trying to publish notable works, which, here they are. They've magically appeared in my setup. Haha. And you gain points by doing this, and also various rewards, like your skill at treating patients goes up. There's several different actions you can take. The most common is going to be that you're treating patients. And you can treat patients in any of these regions. In a multiplayer game, only 3 of these regions are filled, and it has to be Patrician, Plebeian, and Peregrini. But in the solo game, you just mix them all together and lay out 4. And the patients that are going to be available to treat each round are decided by these cards. So they're very small, but there's symbols over here on the left side that tell you what to put on a given card, and then whether to add or take away gladiators from the arena, where you can also treat patients. And the types of treatments that you can do are based on ancient medicine. So I'll move our dignitaries out of the way for the moment. You have sanguine, phlegmatic, melancholic, and choleric patients. These cards also offer you the option of doing little special projects, and you get rewards for being the one to treat the final patient on one of these cards. You're also able to solicit patients to your house, which is considered less respectable, but it's a good way to snatch some patients that you need to treat of various types. As you treat patients, you're going to gain focus in the areas where you've been working, essentially. And then you can use that focus to publish works. So if I treat a whole bunch of phlegmatic patients, I have some focus in the phlegmatic area, and then I want to publish on my findings, then I could do that. There are also journeys you can take to pick up herbs and books, which are also going to help you with treatment and with gaining philosophy, which you also need to perform other parts of the game. For example, you lose philosophy when you publish because you're spending that intellectual capital, or when you bid in the contest. The other place that you can go is the bathhouse, which is up here on the left, the Baths of Trajan. Here you can recuperate, because if you start doing too well, you start to lose health because people are poisoning you. Haha. And then you can also join various sects. So I put the sects down here, but we'll put them up here by the baths. But essentially, you can become an empiricist, a methodic, or a dogmatist. You can join multiple sects in solo, but in multiplayer, you can only join one, and they're used as a tiebreaker. You're also constantly managing your stats over here, and that's actually one of the things that makes the game very, very interesting. So you gain focus by treating patients and taking their little treatment meeples to your player board. If your focus track is full, but you want to gain focus, you can actually increase your philosophy. So these arrows are actually about interconnected aspects of your player, of your doctor character. You can gain philosophy by getting books or by getting extra focus, but you lose philosophy when you publish or when you bid in the contest at the end of the year. Choleric patients cause you to gain reputation when you treat them. You lose reputation when you solicit patients into your house. Again, I mentioned that was disreputable. Or when you go into the arena to treat gladiators. And then if your reputation track is full, but you would gain reputation, you actually drop health. And the reason for that is that your reputation is getting too big and people are trying to sabotage your work. If you need to regain your health, again, you recuperate at the baths. Treating phlegmatic patients does actually cause you to lose health, so be careful with that.
But you can't actually die, so don't worry if you lose all of your health. First, it will cost you focus, and if you have no focus to lose, then it'll cause you to lose points. So basically, you have these little interconnected traits that you are playing with throughout the game. You're spending in various categories and gaining in various categories to get your actions done. So I want to talk about the big key aspect of multiplayer and then how that differs in solo, because I think that does impact how this game really works. I think solo feels fundamentally different from multiplayer for a very specific reason. So one thing that makes the multiplayer game very interesting is that the catch to worker placement. So you're placing workers either in your home or out here in the world to perform actions for you. However, the trick is that each player gets to make their own decision about when they start to perform actions. So once you start performing actions, you can't place any more workers out. So you are essentially trying to balance between doing the most things and also having the first dibs on any of the spaces on which you've placed a meeple or, according to the game book, a metapole. So in the multiplayer version of the game, that is a lot of the drama. There's a lot of tension of looking at other people and thinking, oh my God, are they going to start taking their action next? Are they going to get first dibs on those books? Are they going to be the one who gets to complete the project? Oh no. And so, you have to really think that out. In solo, it's fundamentally different. Essentially, in solo, what's going to happen is these contest markers are going to move throughout the game. So Galenus is going to move up the track as he gains abilities, and these dignitaries will either just kind of end up below you, or they'll end up knocked out of the game altogether as you complete your goals. And when it gets to Galenus's meeple, then you can do all of your actions just right there at one time. So in the solo game, the trick isn't to start taking actions soonest, it's to get Galenus to a point where he's taking actions earlier. And then each of the solo opponent, dignitary meeples, only does one thing per turn, but they do what's on their card. So Satyrs the Physician, for example, will treat all patients in the region he's in. The Asiarch will clear out the arena, so you better get ahead of him if you want to treat a gladiator. Diogenes the Cynic will discard herbs or books on the journey card. So if you want to shop, you better do it quick. And then Pelops the Physician will try to treat one patient of every type, and then will gain skill for doing so. So basically, the dignitary metapoles exist in the game to get in your way, clear off stuff that you might have wanted, and kind of force you to force your way up the contest track in order to get things done. And that has a really different feel from, if I kind of cut my actions short, I can take some of them first. It's just a different decision-making process. So I think I've pretty much boiled this down. In solo, you're working to complete these 4 goals. In multiplayer, you're just working to get IP. And you're balancing your resources in both modes between what you're using to take actions and then how much effort you're putting into the contest each year. So those are the very basics of Galenus. Let's go ahead and have some final thoughts.
All right, so final thoughts time. Galenus is a tough one to talk about because I really, really wanted it to be as amazing as it promises to be. Medical showmanship and bitter rivalry sounds super thrilling and kind of cutthroat in a way that I'm not convinced this game actually was, for a number of reasons. That said, I do want to start with the good, and I think the good here is that there are a lot of very interesting ideas in this game. I really thought that some of the mechanisms that it wanted to put forward were cool, and I also really liked the attempt to communicate information about ancient medicine in game form. Was it super deep? No, maybe not. But, looking at the different types of patients, there being some sort of reference to publication was really good. I thought, Galen himself had many, many publications. And in fact, there's a story about him where he was in the market and somebody was selling a book by him that he had not written. So, that part is very true to life. The rivalries among doctors are quite true to life. And I just thought that, trying to weave all that together as a game was really interesting. And mechanically, a lot of the design here, I think, is really cool. I liked that focus feeds into philosophy. Philosophy feeds into reputation. Reputation feeds into health. And there's a loop of stats for your doctor that you have to worry about. I liked that certain kinds of treatments had social consequences because while Galen was actually famous for his work with gladiators, there were also, sort of social stigmas around working with different types of patients in the ancient world. And I like this game tried to reflect that. I like that the books that you can get at the shop are, you know, like little medical tomes. They're real titles by real authors, which I thought was really cool. And then, of course, the big mechanical twist of the game, which, as I've mentioned, is not reflected in solo, so I'm going to talk about that in a second. But in the multiplayer version of the game, I absolutely love the catch where you are kind of fighting with yourself about whether to keep putting meeples out or whether to start getting results and taking action sooner than other people to make sure that you get what you want on the spaces you've already used. I think it's a really cool touch. I think that it is a very nice little twist on worker placement, and I thought that was really cool. That said, it doesn't show up in the solo version of the game, and I'm honestly really disappointed by that because I think that mechanically that's probably the best aspect of the game. So let's pull around to some of the issues with this one. And unfortunately, there are a lot. So the general issues, whether you're playing solo or multiplayer, are very much to do with the graphic design of this game. This game was clearly play tested on Tabletop Simulator and not enough in person, and also not enough blind tests of this game were done. It is very clear that most playtests of this game happen online with enlargeable components and probably being taught by the designer or by somebody else who knew the game, because there were parts of the rulebook that had me scratching my head pretty bad. But let's start with the components just as a starting place. So the print on these cards is really small. So I'm holding up one of the cards right now, and as you can see, like, these are the little numbers you need to read in order to populate the card. And this is tiny. This is so tiny. The text is really, really small. There's so much space given to art, but it's actually sort of distracting from the information that you actually need. And I just think this is kind of a wild graphic design choice. And that's actually not the most egregious choice, like, in that vein. So I almost threw one of the pieces of this game away, and the only reason I thought it might be a piece was because it was in the punch board and, like, it was dyed and you could see, like, the surrounding color around the piece. So it was clear I was supposed to punch it out for something, but the piece was this year marker. This is the year marker for this game. It is like a tiny little piece of cardboard. It is so small, and it fills up the year space on the year track on the board when you're doing the competitions. And so, you know, meanwhile, the publication board is like huge, but the border with like the little influence points is small. Like, I don't know what went into these choices. And, you know, there are also other indications of sloppiness throughout the production of the game. I personally thought the rulebook was messy. There are typos that you can find throughout, but most importantly to me is that there's not a lot of great clarity of explanation. So, like, there are certain parts that you really need to know about the game, like how to learn from other doctors, for example, that show up in parts of the rulebook where the information is there. If you want to look it up again, it's not totally clear how to find it. And, like, I first noticed it in the part about the arena with the gladiators, and it took me a second to realize that it also applied to other spaces. And I don't necessarily think that that is great rulebook writing. And so I find that a problem in the rulebook. And unfortunately, it gets worse for solo. To me, the solo mode, you know, I love it when games have a solo mode, but I really want the solo mode to be good. And this solo mode was dissatisfying for me, in part because it took away the best part of the multiplayer game, which was choosing when to reverse course and start taking your actions instead of planning them. And so that's just not even in the solo. And I felt like that in some ways that's the heart of the game. You know, you don't really feel like there's a true bitter rivalry going on in solo. The goals for solo, you know, they're okay, but I don't necessarily think that they're all very exciting to achieve. You know, it didn't give me the same sense of progress or like fighting that I got even in the multiplayer version of this game. And there were also aspects of the solo rules that I thought were sloppy, just kind of undercooked. So again, it's kind of hard to figure out like how you can learn from other physicians. You know, I figured out how to play it, I'm pretty sure, but I had to I found myself rereading, I found myself checking, I found myself finding things kind of ambiguous and having to read between the lines on stuff. And you just shouldn't have to do that in a game rulebook. A game rulebook exists to be really clear so that you can play it with confidence. And I did not feel confident, especially in my very first solo plays of this game. And, you know, the reality is that most people don't play games 5+ times and take all that time to learn how to play. And so, you know, the fact that your several first games are going to be kind of learning games is a major problem for this one, in my opinion. So To sum up, I really wanted to like Galenus better than I did. I think it's got a lot of really interesting ideas in it. I love seeing people try to bring ancient history out in a game, and there's a lot about that that's cool. But the execution on this game was just sloppy. And I don't like that, partially because I felt like this game had a lot of potential that didn't make it onto the table. Partially because I, as a solo player especially, felt kind of like under attended with this one. And also, you know, I really see Ion as a publisher, like trying to position itself as kind of a historical company, a company that produces these really legit games on really serious topics. And I think that if you're going to do that marketing wise, then you also owe it to yourself and to your audience to have really beautiful productions that kind of underscore the gravitas of the subject matter that you're trying to cover. And I'm not getting that impression from this game. So would I look at maybe a reprint of this game and a clean up rules? Actually, yeah, like I really wanted this to be wildly special. And, you know, I think that it had the potential. But as it is, you know, play it if you're really interested in it as a historical curiosity. But I don't think it realized its full potential as a game. So thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, donate to me on Patreon if you're feeling generous. And most of all, happy gaming.